A lot of Chinese tourists have just changed their travel patterns. They are traveling to different destinations. Thailand is no longer the hot destination that perhaps it was pre-pandemic. There have been issues in terms of the border war with Cambodia is not helping. Earlier in the year, we had those issues around the scam centers and the kidnapping of a Chinese national, which had a huge impact on Chinese confidence to travel to Thailand.
Thailand's tourism engine is sputtering after a rapid post-pandemic rebound. Visitor numbers are slightly down this year, with Chinese travellers still slow to return, even as spending per tourist keeps revenues high. Joining me is Gary Bowerman, a travel and tourism analyst from High Yield Tourism. Gary, thank you very much for joining me today and taking the time for us. So Thailand's post-COVID travel recovery is waning. Why?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I think there are a number of reasons. I think waning is probably a little bit of a strong word. If you look at the first 7 months of the year, total visitors are down about 7%. But if you look at the Chinese market, which is the key market, delivered 11 million visitors to Thailand in 2019. That was down almost 30%. So in terms of most markets into Thailand, it's doing okay. But it's that key, vital Chinese market. The arrivals are not coming, and therefore the spend isn't there.
But we're still down from the pre-COVID peak, which was about 40 million tourists or arrivals, let's say, is how it's measured, in the full year of 2019. Why is that?
So what we've seen since the pandemic is we did see this huge resurge of travel, particularly in 2023 and certainly in 2024. We saw a lot of intra-regional travel. We saw people traveling again once their freedoms were returned. You know, COVID had such a long and deep impact on the travel industry here in Southeast Asia in particular. There were 2 long years of lockdowns, and the Chinese market was locked down for 3 years. So that really put travel and tourism onto the back burner. And even if we look back to 2019 now, it's 6 years ago, most countries in the region haven't recovered to where they were in 2019. There are a couple of exceptions, Japan and probably Vietnam this year, that have. They're having a moment in tourism this year. It's their year. But travel and tourism to Thailand is struggling for a number of reasons. There have been issues in terms of the border war with Cambodia is not helping. Earlier in the year, we had those issues around the scam centers in Cambodia and the kidnapping of a Chinese national, which had a huge impact on Chinese confidence to travel to Thailand. So there's various reasons, I think. And I think also a lot of Chinese tourists have just changed their travel patterns. They are traveling to different destinations. Thailand is no longer the hot destination that perhaps it was pre-pandemic.
Okay, so there's still plenty of room for growth in your opinion then. So maybe before we get into all of the different details of what Thailand is trying to do to revive tourism, how important is tourism for the Thai economy, first of all?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because the Bank of Thailand says that officially it accounts for about 12% of GDP. So directly it accounts for about 12% of GDP. But in terms of employment, it's much higher than that. It's around about 20% of all employment. And actually, if you look at the indirect economic benefits of tourism to Thailand, it's much, much higher. The challenges for Thailand are not just the actual contribution to GDP. Tourism is almost embedded in the Thai national personality, particularly the government. It likes to promote around the world that it's a friendly country, it's tourism safe, and it has all these different soft power attributes that it likes to promote around the country, so branding the country through tourism. So if tourism is seen as perceived as failing or isn't doing as well as previous years, that's a big issue for the country. And also because across the region, travel and tourism is so competitive after the pandemic. Every country is challenging hard to attract travelers from the key markets like China and India, but also from regional countries, each other in Southeast Asia, from Japan, from South Korea. And so Thailand at the moment is seeing that those figures this year are less than expected, and that's having an impact on the national personality.
Okay, so there's been a raft of measures announced in order to keep the growth that they had seen coming out of the dip in the pandemic going. Like I said, it's not as rapid a growth as they wanted, with the arrival slightly down compared to the period from last year, January to August, 7% you said. So what is the country doing in order to try and boost growth in tourism?
various measures. Thailand has tried many, many things this year. It has a lot of different policy levers. It has a very, very creative tourism authority, and it's trying really to capture attention in a region where travel patterns have changed. They have definitely changed since COVID. We saw during COVID that those long lockdowns in all countries really influenced how people perceive travel and tourism once there was a reopening. And people really want different things from tourism, or they really want to they want to enjoy outdoor nature. They want to get out and about, but there's also very strong value consciousness in markets at the moment. And that's one of the things we're seeing across the region, is that spending is difficult to capture and it's difficult to grow. And most destinations are finding that at the moment. And Thailand, although, if you go back over the last 10, 15 years, it's been very, very successful at all aspects of tourism. It's now finding that things are more challenging than they were pre-COVID.
Okay, and the visitor mix is important. We've seen Chinese tourists, which are very important for the sector in Thailand, lagging, certainly far below where they were in 2019, whereas India seems to be rising. So let's go into some of these measures a bit more. So firstly, do visa waivers for Chinese and Indian tourists make a big difference, or is more needed?
They do. So they are they are part of the toolkit. They're not the absolute way to deliver tourism growth over a period of time, but they certainly happened in that post-COVID period when people wanted travel that was quick, that was easy, and there was no bureaucracy. So having visa-free access over the past 3 years has certainly helped, and particularly in your key markets like India, China, definitely, but also Southeast Asian markets, Russia to some degree during the winter as well. You're really looking at how those big markets can drive tourism growth over the forthcoming period, and you need to make it as easy as possible because it's challenging. As I said, it's very competitive across the region, and so all the other countries are offering the same thing in terms of visa-free. So there's no real competitive advantage. You kind of have to offer it rather than fall behind.
Yeah, I think it's. I've seen analysis showing that Chinese tourists are a bit more cash-strapped than they once were. They're traveling more domestically. There's more incentives for them to travel inside China, as among the reasons why the other countries outside of China need to do more in order to tempt them to go there. So, Gary, one of the ideas which is supposedly to tempt tourists to come to Thailand is a crypto exchange. You bring your crypto to this tourist DigiPay pilot that they're launching, and then you can convert your currency simply, easily, cheaply into baht, which you then, of course, spend in Thailand. Is this a bit of a niche idea, or is it actually enough to attract people to Thailand, or at least is it enough to make the kind of dent that they're hoping for?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's a brave idea, and Thailand isn't the only looking to experiment with this in Asia. But I think the way that what the impact will be. So what Thailand East Asia, you have a lot of payment wallets. People pay with e-payment wallets, but they're not interoperable. You can't use them in different countries. And destinations have found that is challenging to unlock payments and unlock spending when travelers are in different countries. Central banks across the region have tried to find fixes to open up spending across borders. And we've seen a lot of bilateral agreements between different countries, different central banks, and different commercial banks to try and make spending more easy across borders. But Bitcoin kind of jumpstarts that. So by enabling younger people in particular, and Bitcoin is held quite widely in some of the key markets for Thailand, such as India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Russia. It's popular and it's well held. So basically being able to convert that store of wealth into an e-wallet in Thailand and then spend it liberally as you want while you're traveling is an interesting idea. I don't think Thailand is going to be alone in doing this. I think many other countries will follow suit. I think Thailand has basically just tried to jump aboard faster than everybody else. So once again, it comes back a little bit like visa-free access. Ultimately, most countries will be offering this. So the actual competitive advantage in time will probably be marginal.
Okay, now something that might attract a lot more people, certainly it sounds very good. How do the free domestic flight schemes work, and why are they necessary? Yeah, so basically, this also goes back to COVID. So if you remember during COVID that
in most countries of the region, domestic travel was the only thing that kept the travel and tourism industries from complete collapse, because borders were closed for 2 or 3 years. And so domestic tourism was focused. There were a lot of incentives, there were a lot of discounts, and in some cases, there were free giveaways of flights. Now, we expected after COVID that you would see a linear recovery and both international and domestic tourism would grow accordingly. But that hasn't happened in some destinations. And Thailand is finding that because it has a shortfall in international travelers, it really wants to regenerate its domestic scene once again. And to do that, it's potentially offering free flights on 6 different airlines in the country. Let's see how this happens. This is a kind of specific period of time in the low season. Some of the airlines are not particularly keen on this because it's quite difficult to administer. We don't really know what the ultimate impact will be. We don't know how this will drive spending into different parts of the country. It's a little bit of a gambit, and I think it really shows at the moment that Thailand is struggling for ideas really to recapture the vibrancy of its entire travel economy, not just inbound tourism, but also domestic tourism.
I imagine it's trying to spread the impact of over-tourism as well, so the strain on airports, beaches, traffic in specific areas. So even though they want more arrivals, if they're quite concentrated, that might be more of a problem. What about the regional competition against Thailand? So Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, how competitive is that environment?
Yeah, it's very competitive. Certainly this year, Vietnam and Malaysia have done very, very well. They've been very, very strong. They've attracted more Chinese tourists than they have previously, and that's obviously had an impact, a knock-on impact into Thailand. The strongest market in Asia at the moment is Japan. It continues to break monthly, quarterly, and half-yearly records for inbound visitors. But it goes back to the point that you were saying, the numbers of visitors. Japan this year could attract 40 million visitors. It wants to attract 60 million by 2030. What is the carrying capacity? What is the ceiling for the numbers of visitors, not just in the hotspots, in the heavily visited areas, but also the secondary and tertiary areas where you want travelers to move away from the key and overcrowded areas. That's going to be a big challenge going forward for Japan. But we also have in the background, economic circumstances are changing. We don't really know how this slowdown that we have seen in most countries this year of Asia Pacific in terms of travel and tourism volume is going to play out over the rest of this year and into 2026. So at the moment, there's a little bit of consternation, I think, because it's very competitive to attract travelers, especially from those key markets like China and Japan, the Middle East. But ultimately, what's going to happen when the economic slowdown really hits? And I think that's coming.
Yes, I imagine the average person watching this, thinking about tourism in Thailand, they see it as a fun and friendly and happy topic, but it is extremely serious and important for countries like Thailand. And thank you very much, Gary Bowerman, for breaking this down for us.
You're very welcome.